Well, it has to be better coordination. You know, what we've seen is a very raggedy form instituted by right-wing extremism. Everyone knows that the right-wing extremism in this country has targeted democratically ran cities. And quite frankly, they've been very intentional about going after democratically ran cities that are led by people of color. And their whole motivation is to create disruption and chaos, because that's what that particular party has been about. Right? This is the same political party that did not want to accept that President Obama was actually an American. It's the same Republican right-wing extremism that stormed the Capitol. It's the same right-wing extremism that refuses to accept the results of the Civil War. It's raggedy. It's disrespectful. It's mean-spirited. It's an unclean spirit, quite frankly.
Unclean.
And so I got you. I just want to make sure that people understand what we're facing. That's why it's so important that the faith community is leaning in this moment.
I want you to understand what the world... Sorry, I took myself out. The crime that you're seeing in big blue cities, it's extreme, it's raggedy, unclean, extreme far-right people. It's Republicans, by the way. Crime in Democrat-run cities is Republicans' fault. Raggedy? What did he say? Unclean? Can you imagine that? It's madness. It's out. I mean, hold on. I just got to play this one more time because it's Hakeem Jeffries. Extreme MAGA Republicans. Extreme MAGA Republicans. Why is our food so expensive? Extreme MAGA Republicans. Why are they looting the stores in downtown Chicago? Extreme MAGA Republicans.
Well, it has to be better coordination. You know, what we've seen is a very raggedy form instituted by right-wing extremism.
Right-wing extremism.
Everyone knows that right-wing extremism in this country.
Everyone knows right-wing extremism in this country
has targeted democratically ran cities. And quite frankly, they've been very intentional about going after democratically ran cities
of people of color,
that are led by people of color.
That's enough. That's enough of that absolute horse crap. It's a joke. It's like the Russians pooped in my pants. This is the level of scapegoating, blaming, demonizing, blaming others for your own failings. It is. You thought it couldn't get any worse than Lori Lightfoot. Holy crab apples, people! You get what you vote for, and then sometimes you get a little more. Okay, today's show is going to be amazing. One of those interviews that happens of a man or a story, a person, could be a man, woman, whatever, a story that I've been following from day one. I remember live streaming with Barnes day one of the January 6th insurrection, and Barnes he wasn't in DC, he was just on the outskirts, and we've seen this progress from day one, from what was, I mean, effectively nothing worse than a bad hockey riot, which we've had a few of up in Canada, to the biggest political persecution in the history of America, as far as I'm concerned, or if not the up there. And one of the stories, the man dubbed the Q-Anon Shaman, the face of the January 6th insurrection, the most violentest insurrection that happened to be unarmed, although I think Angeli-Chansley was armed with an American flag on a spear, which I believe was qualified as a weapon with which he had. So now, let me just, I mean, if I'm keeping track, we've had Brendan Strack on. We've had Lectern Guy Johnson. We've had Lectern Guy on. We've had Tarek Johnson, the Capitol Police officer, lieutenant, who now no longer talking about this. And today we have Jacob Chansley, Jacob Angeli-Chansley, the face of the insurrection. Got what was a ridiculously harsh sentence, treatment that was ridiculously unfair, and he's going to tell his story today. I'm going to double check the audio levels, people, and please don't troll, although that is probably the biggest indication that people are going to troll. I think I've adjusted my gain, so the volume should be level. I'll adjust it if I need to. Jacob is in the background. It's going to be Jacob, or I am not calling him the Q-Anon Shaman any longer. Because I've listened to one podcast, and I understand now the origin. I understood the origin of the QAnon Shaman. You know, labels are easy to affix, and then everybody knows what they're dealing with. He's going to quit yelling. Jeez Louise. Okay, I am bringing in the man of the hour, Jake Angeli-Chansley. Sir, coming in. All right, sir, how goes the battle?
Oh, one day at a time, one mind at a time.
Now I'm going to make sure I'll let the chat tell me if our audio is balanced. You are surprisingly young. I think I'm shocked. How old are you?
I'm 36.
You're not that young. You just look young. You look young after everything you've been through. Holy cows. Okay, I'm gonna pin a lot of the comments here because people are gonna have questions, and I've got a lot of questions in our locals community if I don't get to them, but I'm gonna get to all of them. Jacob, people know who you are, but the 30,000-foot overview for those who may be seeing you or hear you speak for the first time, who are you?
I am a spiritual activist, a shamanic practitioner, a published author. I am a entrepreneur. I'm a human being trying to do the right thing.
36 years old. Were you born and raised in Arizona?
Yes, born and raised in Phoenix in District 8, which is the district that I'm running for Congress in.
Well, that their answers one of the questions from our locals community. They said, "Are you going to run for office?" And I knew that you were. At least I thought I remembered it from your profile. 36, born and raised in Arizona. Now, hold on. How many siblings do you have, and what do your parents do?
I have two siblings, younger. One of my parents is dead. My mother, she's doing well. She's a teacher at aesthetic school, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I try to keep my family out of things. They're not politically active, though they are supportive of me as an individual. They don't really dabble in politics or activism.
Well, that's it. I guess they got forced into it. A name like Angeli-Chansley, it's not exactly the most common of last names, so I guess they were forced into this by circumstance. Without getting too much into it, but just like I like to understand how someone got to where they are in life. What kind of kid were you? Like, what was your childhood like? Were you a troublemaker? Were you always into? I mean, we're going to get into the shaman thing in a bit, but we're going to get into the January 6th stuff in depth. But like, what type of childhood? Normal? Were you a troublemaker? Let us know.
No, I wasn't a troublemaker. I was a very inquisitive child. I thought very deeply on things, whether they be spiritual or otherwise. At 5 years old, I wanted to know who God was, what God was, where God was, how God was, why the world is so screwed up if God is real. And I never got satisfactory answers from my parents, from religion, or from schools. So I went about a lifelong search for the truth and have come to find much of the truth that I was seeking.
Well, actually, good, interesting segue. Did you grow up religious or not at all?
Well, my mom tried to raise me and my brother's Catholic until she realized that wasn't working very well.
So you remember at the age of 5, like asking the existential questions of what happens to the bad people on this earth?
Well, more so, why is the world the way that it is? Who is God? Where is God? What is God? How did God come into being? Why, if God is real, why is the world the way that it is? And the conclusion I've come to is that God doesn't make the world this way. We do.
All right, now this is going to segue into the shamanism. I mean, we don't need to get into like university, high school, but how do you get into, first of all, what is shamanism? How do you get into it? And then how did it lead you to that infamous day of January 6th?
Well, I've always been interested in shamanism ever since I was a child. I have Native American blood in me. I have Cheyenne blood, but I've always been interested in what it is that the medicine men knew. I knew that those guys wearing headdresses and horns or feathers, that like they knew something, and that it was something that we had lost here in this country or in the West in general, something we had lost as humanity. And I wanted to know what it was. So that was where the curiosity started. As for what shamanism is, the term shaman is a Siberian or Mongolian term. It simply means the one who knows. And it was a label given to all indigenous belief systems by anthropologists because they noticed that they all believed in very similar things. For example, in shamanistic cultures, which shamanism is the oldest religion in the world, it's the first religion. So I wanted to go to the roots of all religions. I studied pretty much every religion there is on the planet, and I came to find that they all have shamanic roots. So all shamanistic cultures believe in, number one, a unifying field of life, whether they call it the Great Spirit or God or whatever. They all believe in a unified field or an energetic field that permeates all things with life. Number two, they believe in the spirit world and the idea of positive and negative spirits existing in that spirit world. Number three, they all believe in the power of healing. Number four, they all believe in the notion of prayer and meditation to get in touch and in tune with the spirit world, to ally themselves with angelic spirits, to explore the spirit world, to become one with God. Another thing is they also all believe in like the power of song and dance, singing and drumming as a means of getting into like a trance-like state that allows them to dissolve the illusions of separation. They also all believe in sacraments and the idea of there being sacramental plants or fungi or something like that, whether it be incense or consumables or what have you, things that can help them to heal or things that can give them an altered state of consciousness, allow them to get in touch with the spirit world. And they also all believe in like ordeals, going through prolonged ordeals or strategic suffering in a way so that they can avoid negative timelines for themselves and the tribe. So if you look at all religions around the world, they all believe at their roots these same principles. They just have different ways of explaining it using their different tongues and different labels.
I'm going to get to a lot of the chat, which you're not sensitive. I presume at this point you're not sensitive to stuff in the chat, but there's a lot of, it seems that you've you've brought out some people who were making accusations, which we're going to get to in a bit. But so, I mean, before January 6th, let's back this all up. So you're into this long before January 6th. You didn't just show up that day dressed the way you did. What are you doing? Let's just say pre-COVID. What are you doing in life pre-COVID? And then what happens after COVID hits leading up to January 6th?
Well, yeah, I've been dressing in my shamanic regalia for over 10 years. And I've been a spiritual activist for quite some time. Now, prior to COVID, I was working in group homes with troubled teen boys. And I did that for 6.5 years. And I also went down to my Arizona state capitol and all by myself, mind you, in my shamanic regalia, banging my drum, singing my shamanic song, and then basically giving the puppets, the political puppets in power, quite the tongue lashing.
So helping kids for 6.5 years as a full-time job, or is that volunteer work?
No, yeah, well, and I also did volunteer work, but yes, as a full-time job. And then I did volunteer work on the side, working with traumatized children, doing art therapy.
I got to ask you why. Like, how do you even find your way into that very specific? I presume it's spiritually fulfilling, but not financially fulfilling. How do you find yourself in that field?
Yes, it is not financially fulfilling, but you know, I store my treasure in heaven, so I'm not so concerned about financial wealth. I'd rather have spiritual wealth any day, and I have accumulated, you know, what I can as far as spiritual wealth, and God has saw fit to keep me financially stable. I got into it because I care about children. I care about future generations. I know that if we don't help our children, then they are doomed. If we don't help our children, it's a part of shamanic cultures to think 7 generations ahead. So we have to ask ourselves, given the current trajectory for society, where will we be 7 generations from now? And that was a question that, you know, continued to resurface in my mind over and over again. And because I have a great love for, you know, helping and protecting children, and because I wanted to give them a positive male role model, especially these teen boys that were fresh out of juvenile detention centers, taken out of abusive homes, taken out of homes due to neglect and stuff like that, I wanted to give them a positive male role model, one like, you know, that they've never had before.
That's fascinating. And now this might actually explain, I suspect, the trajectory after 2020 or after COVID, when I presume that, you know, the very demographic that you have been working with for 6.5 years took probably among the biggest hits from the isolation and all that stuff. So you're doing this for 6.5 years, then COVID hits. What does your life look like from the day, so let's just say March 2020 to January 6, 2021? That's when it happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yes.
what happened? Are you shut out of doing what you were doing for the last 6 years because of COVID?
Well, I quit working with children in group homes shortly after I was chased out of one of the group homes by a kid that broke into the knife cabinet and started chasing me around the house with it. He's a 16-year-old boy, and he was upset because I took his phone and his computer privileges. And so he decided to break into the cabinet. He pulled out a knife and then started to chase me around the house with it while I was on the phone with police officers, letting them know what was going on. And the thing is that if he would have started attacking me with a knife, and if I would have defended myself, then I would have gone to prison for assault on a minor. Okay. So there's that. And then there's also the added factor that shortly after the young man was arrested, the CPS system and the police officers wanted to bring him back to the group home that I was working at. And so here's this kid that's chasing me around the house with a knife, and CPS and the police want to bring him back to the house with me in it, And so I weighed all of the options, and I thought to myself, I'm getting paid minimum wage here. And clearly I'm putting myself in a vulnerable position. I've been doing this for 6.5 years. So shortly before I decided to leave that job, I created a voiceover profile and an acting profile online to do some sort of like something fun, It's crazy. And this is part of the reason why I have an affinity for police officers, because the more effective I was at doing my job and reinforcing the rules that were in the group home, the more they didn't like me, So I kind of have a sympathy for police officers, because the more effective they are at their jobs, then the more people don't like them. I worked with a lot of police officers when I was in group homes, and their job is difficult. So I wanted to do something fun. I got some work doing voiceover work. I never did any actual acting work. It was just something like, well, this seems like fun, and maybe I could make some money on the side. So that's how that ended. Then I had a YouTube channel for a while. Even like I started in 2018, and then in 2020, as I saw them rolling out the New World Order totalitarian agenda, I realized, okay, this is it. They're really going for it here. And so I really went, full steam ahead with my YouTube. I published my book that I had written in 2017 called One Mind at a Time, A Deep State of Illusion. That book is very, very profound. I would encourage anyone that thinks that they have the courage and the capacity to, fathom and grasp the totality of the situation to read that book, because it's only 150 pages and it's only $9.99 on Amazon.
Does it?
So
do you have an audiobook, and do you read the audiobook?
No, I
damn it,
don't.
okay.
No, yeah, sorry.
Well, then I can't read it. I'm sorry. I'm joking. I'm not joking.
Well, it is short. The chapters are brief, and they all blend together. So like you can read a page or two and then set it down and mentally digest what you just read. And it's basically a revealing of exactly what the deep state is, who is behind it, how it operates, and how we can solve the problems of the deep state or the shadow government, what JFK called the tightly knit, highly efficient machine, what Eisenhower called the military industrial complex, what Republicans now are calling the swamp. So I published that in 2020. I also went full steam ahead with my YouTube. I began just basically totally exposing what the deep state was. Much of the stuff that was in my book or that didn't make it into my book was being discussed on my YouTube channel, which got taken down. And then I had to start a new one. And I also started a Rumble channel because I didn't want to have to, I got myself up to like 11,000 followers. And then, lo and behold, one day I'd wake up and, I'm missing 1,000 followers on YouTube. What happened? So I was definitely shadow banned. They were definitely, culling my following. So I started a Rumble, and just started becoming a spiritual activist in every way. I was going to pretty much every Trump rally. I went to a climate change rally to basically tell them that they're being lied to, and that carbon emissions is not the problem. The problem is anthropogenic chemicals, or forever chemicals, bioaccumulating in the ecosystem to toxic levels, destroying the microbiological life in the soil, the water, the air, and in our bodies, causing disease, causing ecocide, causing mass extinctions. They didn't like that very much. They wanted to believe the BS. And then I also went to a couple BLM Antifa rallies here in Arizona as a counter protester, marching with the police. I had my sign, my Q sent me sign. I was in my regalia marching with the police, because if they're going to come into my city and they're going to, do their thing, well, then you better believe that I'm going to be there and make my presence known. You're not coming into my city and, trying to riot or attack police officers.
This is at least now I'm understanding. There's someone in here who's convinced you're a paid actor, but at the very least now it makes sense in terms of where the accusation of you might actually be an attempted actor. What did you do voiceover for?
Oh, I can do over 30 different voices and accents. So
you have a very you're the way you speak actually reminds me a lot of Owen Schroyer. Like it's a good radio voice, crisp enunciation. But so you did some voiceover work, and there's no shame in that. People think I don't know what people think is work that is not critical or blameworthy work. But actually, just backing up a little bit, 2017, you say not the voiceover YouTube stuff. When do you get into discovering the world for what it is? When I listen to you on Malice, we're now all sort of awakened to a similar degree. You're familiar with how corrupt the government has been historically from JFK to modern day. When did that awakening happen for you?
Well, my dad was a staunch Republican. He was a avid Rush Limbaugh enthusiast and listener every day. And so I grew up in a conservative household. We watched Fox News at the dinner table. And so I was raised to support George W. Bush, support the war in Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. And then my grandfather showed me a documentary on 9/11. And it didn't even per se give any theories as to what happened. It just poked a bunch of holes in the narrative through asking questions, because the story we're given is BS. It's clear. The physics of it just don't work. There's all sorts of other things that just don't make sense. So after that, I think I was 16 or 17 at the time. After that, I had such a cognitive dissonance because, people like Rush Limbaugh and George Bush were pro-war in Iraq, pro-war in Afghanistan, pro the 9/11 narrative. But that created enough questions in my mind to create a cognitive dissonance that started to tear through the veils. And after that, I started to really question everything. And the spiritual nature to my revelations about where we were going as a society, what was to come in the future and stuff like that also played a role. So that was where it started. When it comes to really waking up intensely, it was shortly after I got home from the Navy that I really started to understand the debt-based fiat currency, the role of families like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, and the New World Order agenda, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, the role of the United Nations, the IMF, the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, all that stuff, Bohemian Grove. It all started to open up for me. And that veil, that hole that was torn in the veil when I was young began to get larger and larger.
You said when you got home from the Navy, and this is what I get for not delving far enough into your childhood and upbringing. You served, you served in the military?
Yeah, I did 2 years in the United States Navy on board the USS Kitty Hawk CV-63. I was a part of the hazmat division and the maintenance division for the supply department.
That's so 2 years. 2 years service doesn't mean 2 years on a ship, right? To a nincompoop like myself.
No, I did about I think a year and 6 months or something like that, maybe more on a ship.
I'm sorry. So 18 months on a ship, continually away from home.
Oh yeah, I was forward deployed in Japan. So going home was not a drive away. I had to fly across the ocean to go home. So I spent a little over a year in Japan before I went home on leave.
Okay, amazing. No reprimands in your service. You had a clean record, no criminal record.
Well,
leading
kind of. I never got in any trouble except for when I refused to take the anthrax vaccine. And that's why I was administratively separated, because I refused a lawful order. They told me, you got to take this vaccine. I said, no, I've done my research. I'm not taking that. People are dying. People are crippled due to blood clots in their legs. They're 1 in 500 males become sterile. And you want me to take 4 of these things? I think I'll pass. And so I got a general discharge under honorable conditions. And so in that sense, I was refusing vaccines before it was trendy.
What year was that in?
Oh, 2007.
I don't even understand this. Why are they administering an anthrax vaccine in the event that you become exposed to anthrax in the context of your service?
Well, yeah. So because we're a forward deployed vessel, they required forward deployed vessels to receive the anthrax vaccine. And it's the same thing like if somebody is going to go into Iraq or Afghanistan, they were required. But here's the thing, and this is also part of the reason why I didn't take it, not just because of all these negative side effects, but with the anthrax vaccine, the vaccine itself only protects somebody from the skin-borne illness. So it's usually given to like farmers and stuff because they work with a lot of cattle and a lot of like hide and stuff like that. And the anthrax spore will get on their skin and give them blemishes and stuff like that. So that's all it protects against. It does not protect against the airborne illness, the airborne attack that would end up going into a person's lungs. And that is the way that a ship or troops or whatever would be attacked. So why am I going to take a vaccine that's not going to protect me from any sort of an attack and has all these negative side effects? It's almost like God was preparing me for the COVID crap, because not only is it not protecting anybody from the virus, but it has all these adverse side effects.
That's fascinating. I never even thought of that. But you defied a lawful order, which makes you persona non grata in the military, which is about doing as you're told without questioning. This is going to be continued, Jake. This doesn't change anything on our end. I'm just going to end on YouTube now and come on over to Rumble, everybody, because that's where we're going to carry this on. So you are